A word of warning, you are not going to want to do this, but one of the most common recommendations that I make for entrepreneurs that I coach is to consider hiring a virtual assistant, even if it's for 5 or 10 hours a week. Having even just one more person pulling for you makes a massive difference in your business. You can get so much more accomplished, plus it influences how you feel as an entrepreneur as you go through your day. You feel like you're not alone anymore, and that is a great feeling. I'm Pamela Wilson, and I coach people to build profitable businesses. Subscribe to my channel so you can build your revenue. When I recommend hiring a virtual assistant, I get lots of pushback from business owners. They say, where will I find this person? How will I train them? What if I can't keep them busy? And of course, underlying everything is, can I really afford this? All of these things can be figured out. These are all questions that are easy to solve. Once my clients work through those issues, the next thing they ask is, why didn't I do this years ago? Once business owners realize that getting help is not that difficult and they have a system for working with that person, they all wish they had done it a long time ago. In this video, I share how to hire a virtual assistant and how to work with the assistant you hire. If you are watching this video, chances are that you're super busy right now, so the idea of finding someone and training them may just seem like one more thing to do. Well, we're going to talk about how to hire and work with a virtual assistant, and also you'll learn a few habits that you can adopt right now, even if you're not ready to hire someone. And these habits will make it so much easier when you are ready to look for an assistant. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about Revenue Revolution, my free guide to generating large-scale revenue with a small-scale audience. You can find it at pamelawilson.com/revenue. Okay, here's the first thing to think about.
The first thing, and don't laugh, but the first thing that really has to happen in order for you to work with an assistant is you have to come to the realization that you can't do it all by yourself, that you're not supposed to do everything all by yourself. And like I said, don't laugh, because this is actually harder than it sounds. I'm convinced that people who are drawn to entrepreneurship are go-getters. A lot of us are DIYers, so we just kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get it done. So this idea that you don't have to do everything all by yourself and someone can help you with some of it can actually be kind of challenging if you're an entrepreneur. The other thing that feels challenging is you have to give up some control. And between us, giving up control can be difficult for an entrepreneur. You're moving to a different way of spending your time as well. So rather than you doing everything, you'll be spending some of your time managing someone else. When you have an assistant, you have to spend time looking at what they do and guiding their efforts and things like that. The idea, though, is if you do this right, it's totally going to be worth it, because you're going to be able to focus your time on doing your highest value tasks. So how do you get started? Well, I think the best thing that you can do once that you've accepted that you're going to get some help is to start kind of dreaming. And the way to do this and make it very pragmatic is to start thinking about all of the tasks that you do every day and every week and writing them down. So for about a week, I recommend that you simply keep a pad and paper on your desk and you note every single task you do for your business on that pad of paper and don't leave anything out. So even things like checking email or updating social media or even looking at a social media site to see if there's anything that needs to be responded to, writing content or testing a sales funnel, everything that you do for your online business, put it on this list. And once you have that task inventory, you can start to analyze personalize it. So what you want to look for is tasks that are repeatable and explainable. Let me tell you what I mean by that. By repeatable and explainable, I mean you want tasks that happen over and over in a week or even maybe in a month. Tasks that happen again and again. These are ideal to offload because they tend to be tasks that are also explainable. So that means that they're similar enough every time they have to get done that you can create like a step-by-step instruction sheet that someone else can follow and get those tasks done. So you start by looking for those tasks, repeatable and explainable. And then I want you to also grade it by the earnings potential. So if it's something that could earn you more money, that should impact the grade. And then you look for common threads between the tasks. Maybe they are admin tasks. Maybe a lot of them are design tasks or copywriting tasks or technical tasks like website things that need to happen. So I want you to think about the skill set that's needed, because if you do this, you're going to have a better idea of what kind of assistant you can start with. So for example, if you see that one of the things that happens over and over is copywriting, and you do not like copywriting, but you also recognize that strong copywriting is going to make your business money. It has a high earnings potential, and you have a lot of these tasks, then you realize, okay, I need a VA, I need a virtual assistant who has copywriting skills. That's what I need to look for. All right. So we know who we need to hire. We know what skill set we need to look for. What do we do to make working with this person easier? Well, first of all, you need to find someone who speaks your language. And I'm not talking about someone who speaks English or whatever your primary language is. You actually need to find someone who understands things when you explain them. And I know that sounds kind of dumb, but I want to tell you from personal experience. I think I'm pretty clear about the way I explain things. I mean, one of the reasons you're watching this presentation is that you probably think that too, right? But you would be surprised. Every once in a while, you meet someone who just doesn't quite capture what you're saying. So I have had this experience where I work with people, I explain things step by step, and they just get it. They just get it, and they can run with my step-by-step explanation. But I've also had the opposite experience where I give someone a step-by-step, and they just did not really get what I was asking for. And in some cases, it had kind of disastrous results. I mean, they made pretty major mistakes because they weren't speaking my language. They weren't following what I was saying. So what can you do to avoid this situation where you give someone something to do and they just don't seem to understand things when you explain them? So what you do is you start with a trial period. So even if you're hiring someone on a contract basis that you just plan to send projects to and work with occasionally, what you do is when you start working together, you tell them that you would like to have a trial period of whatever you decide. It could be a month, depending on how many projects you plan to give them. It could be a month, or if you don't have that much to give them, maybe you want the trial period to last 2 or 3 months. But you talk about a trial period where you're going to give them some beginning projects and just see if you can hash out a way of working together. You need to give them some small tasks to start and just experiment to see how it is to work with them. What I want to recommend actually is that you just go into this experience with curiosity and a lot of patience, because it may take a while to find a rhythm. Start by booking just a few hours a week or work with someone on an as-needed basis and give them some small projects. So the next thing I always hear is, where do I find this person who is going to be out there pulling for me? Where do I look for an assistant? I have a couple of recommendations. So the first one is to ask your audience. So if you have people on your email list or you have a strong social media presence, try just reaching out to them and letting them know that you are hiring, that you're looking for help, that if you don't want to call it hiring because maybe you are just going to work with someone on a contract basis, you can just say you're looking for someone on a contract basis to work on some projects. The other thing you can do is ask colleagues. So anyone who is in this environment, you might even ask people, if you're in a forum environment or in a Facebook group or something like that, ask around in those places to see if someone knows anyone who's looking for that kind of work. There's also Upwork, which is a site for hiring contractors. You could try that as well. And you may have heard that it's easy to hire someone overseas. So for example, there are several companies who will connect you with assistants in the Philippines or in India who speak amazing English, who are, hardworking people and very detail oriented, and in some cases have really advanced education, but yet they work for an amount that in their society is a great living. And for you, it's very affordable. What I will tell you in looking into these services is the majority of them require you to hire someone either part-time, which they consider to be 20 hours a week, or full-time, which they consider to be 40 hours a week. So if you don't quite have that much work to give someone at this point, then it may not be a good option for you. But if you do get to the point that you have that much work, that you feel like you can keep someone busy even for 20 hours a week, that could be a really economical option and a great place to start. Let's talk about future-proofing your processes. So the way that we future-proof and we make it easier for us to pivot if somebody ends up needing to quickly go somewhere else and they can't help you, is to develop SOPs. And what are SOPs? Well, SOPs are standard operating procedures. And there are two reasons we want to develop these. First of all, sometimes your assistant moves on to other things. They don't give you a lot of heads up. So you have to be able to very quickly hand your tasks over to someone new. But the other, even more compelling reason for developing standard operating procedures is because they are standard operating procedures. It means that all of the tasks that you hand off will be done consistently over time. So if I added a piece of content a year and a half ago, it's going to have the same naming conventions and graphics and the same setup is something that I add tomorrow. It's all consistent because I have standard operating procedures for putting that educational material together. It's a really important skill set to develop. And it's just as important for your assistant as it is for you. I mean, you'll find yourself using your own standard operating procedures, and it gives you this consistent, repeatable approach to getting your business tasks done. So standard operating procedure might sound like overkill if you're a small business, but like I said, it helps you and it helps your assistant. If you don't want to call it a standard operating procedure, you can just call it your how-to document. And that's what I've done. So this is basically a how-to document that is going to take you through the kinds of things that you need to ask your assistant to do when you hand over a task. It starts by giving them the goal for the task and a starting point. Your tasks will all have different starting points. Maybe you want your assistant to start doing them on a Monday. Whatever it is, you put that under starting point. Tools and information needed. You're going to give them links to whatever they need in order to do the task. You can show them screenshots. You can create videos. You could do like a screencast video to show them how to do something. I have to tell you, this is the most time-consuming part of the process. You're not going to want to do this because in order to explain the task, it will take you at least twice as long as just doing it. So I can tell you from personal experience that there were many times that I just did a task. I wanted to explain it to someone and I just did it because it felt like it was shorter. But the good news is that you only have to create this how-to, this detailed how-to once. It is the most time-consuming part of this whole process. But once you create it, and the way to get through it is just to tell yourself, this is the last time I'm going to have to do this task because I'm handing it off. So once you do it, you can hand it off. And the important thing to keep in mind is to let your assistant know that this is an organic document that they can edit and update as needed. So, for example, if there's something about your explanation that wasn't completely clear to them, tell them that they can add any details that they need. Or let's say your software changes and the process for doing this task changes as well. Tell your assistant to update the document. This is the secret to future proofing. It means that your standard operating procedures will always be updated. So no matter when you have to hand them off to someone new, you will always have what you need to hand it over. And the next person will be able to do it because the document will be updated with what is working right now. I recommend that you repeat this as needed, that you make a continual effort to offload tasks. Like I said, it's going to take at least twice as long to describe the task in your how-to document as it is to do the task yourself, but you're never going to have to do it again. So just keep that in mind and repeat this as needed. Let's briefly go over what we covered today so that you understand all these steps. We'll go through them very quickly. So first of all, I recommend that if you have not thought about getting an assistant on board, that you do some pre-planning. And the pre-planning starts with you just writing down everything you do for your business for at least a week. Write down everything. Maybe for 2, if your tasks change from week to week, maybe you spend a couple of weeks, but just jot everything down. Keep a pen and paper by your desk. Write it all down. Do you need somebody who can edit audio and video? Do you need someone who can answer your emails? Do you need someone who can provide customer support? Just write down the skill set, and that will help you see the patterns. To make working together easy for both of you, I recommend that you start with a trial period and you kind of negotiate this with a person and say, look, I want to work with you for a month or for 2 months and just we'll see how it goes. And if you're not sure about where to find your assistant, I recommend that you start by asking your audience. You may find someone there who is very excited to work with you. You could consider asking your colleagues, going onto a site like Upwork and creating a job description and hiring someone on a contract basis. Or if you have enough work, you might consider looking overseas and working with someone. The benefit of doing that is that they're in a completely different time zone. And so oftentimes you can give someone something to do at the end of the day. And when you wake up the next morning, it's sitting in your inbox and it's done. And I talked to you about SOPs, standard operating procedures, and why those are important. They're just as important for you as they are for your assistant because it means everything that happens in your business happens very consistently, whether you do it, your assistant does it, your next assistant does it. It happens, last year, this year, or next year, it's always consistent. So having that standard operating procedure, or as I like to call it, I think the friendlier name is like the how-to document. I shared a copy of an adapted copy of the one that I use to make it nice and clear for you. And you'll have that to use as a starting point. It's just going to prompt you so you can remember the kinds of things that you need to include, like a goal, like a starting point, like the tools needed and links to all those tools. I create these documents, I hand them over to my assistant. And I mean, at this point, I found somebody who speaks my language, thankfully, and she rarely even asks me questions at this point because the document has everything she needs. Every once in a while, something won't be clear and we'll clear it up and then we just edit the document.
So what will you pay your virtual assistant? Well, that's going to depend on what they're doing for you, obviously. Someone who's managing your inbox may not get paid as much as someone who is doing business management tasks. Use the internet to research going rates, and if you want to keep your assistant happy for the long term, pay them well and pay them on time. Even if you hire someone for just 5 hours a week, it doesn't end up being a lot of money, and that frees you up. And if it allows you to make more revenue in your business, it's going to be well worth it. And while you're thinking about how you'll get things done in your business, you might start wondering about what tools you should use to get things done. Like, where should I spend on tools and where should I save? Well, I have thoughts about this. For the best tools to invest in and the ones you don't need, watch this video next.